also printing a Tanya on Rylands library. My mind wandered back a few decades ago. There was a very affluent, prosperous businessman. His name was Mr. Steinmetz. He lived in Caracas, Venezuela. And he was like the sole distributor for National Panasonic electrical goods in South America. So he traveled extensively, especially in the Far East. And whenever he would go on a trip, he would write to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, tell him his itinerary, and ask for a blessing, everything should go well. One day, he was traveling. In the course of his journey, he gets paged in the airport, somewhere in the Midwest of America. The Rebbe's secretary, he asked if he could do a great favor. If he could, there'll be a package waiting for him at his destination in Japan. Could he deliver it to the destination? Okay, no problem, obliged. He arrives in Japan, and there's a package indeed waiting for him. Opens it up. There's no cover note, there's no address where to deliver it to. It's 2 Tanyas, 2 books of the Tanya. He doesn't have a clue what to do with it. So he kept it with him. And he did his business, went to all his meetings. He had a day to spare before his return trip back to Caracas. He decided, he was told that there is actually a synagogue, an ancient synagogue in the city of Kobe in Japan. Went to check it out. He's sitting in the shul. And suddenly he realized there's another Jew sitting there. And this poor Jew is like broken-hearted. He's like depressed. He's morose. He's crying his eyes out. And he goes over to him. Maybe I can help you. Like, no, you can't help me. Nobody can help me. He's despairing. Finally, he opens up, Makara, what happened? And he tells him he is a traveling representative for a business concern. He travels extensively. And one day he was traveling on the plane. And suddenly on the ground, his plane, an airplane, collided with another plane. And it's a major tragedy. He came out, he emerged alive and well, he wasn't scathed. The next day he had rebooked, he gets on the plane, and suddenly in his mind, he's like reliving the trauma, the agony, the screams, the shrieks of the moment of impact. And he was forced to do in his head in. He had to leave the plane. Gets off. He tried it again and again a few times to get on a plane. He just couldn't do it. He went to psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists. To no avail. Someone said, write a letter to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Get a blessing. You have to realize his job is on the line. You can't be a traveling salesman if you don't travel. Anyway, the Rebbe sent him a Tanya and told him to learn a certain chapter. When he gets into the plane, fasten your seatbelts and learn this chapter of Tanya, and all of these terrible re-experiencing that you're going through your head will be taken care of. And he did it, and for years he's been traveling, until now he's arrived in Kobe, and somehow he misplaced his Tanya. And yesterday he got on a plane, and he's trying to travel, and he's going crazy. His mind is and he was forced to leave. And he said, I'm stuck here. And where in the world am I going to get a Tanya in Kobe, Japan? I don't know. I'm lost. I don't know what to do. And suddenly this Mr. Steinmetz from Caracas takes out of his pocket a Tanya. And he said, the Rebbe thought of you even here, and you're all right. And I thought this story serves as a perfect metaphor, for what the purpose of Tanya is. We're all going through incredibly difficult times. The beauty of the Tanya is it's a collection. Really, in reality, what happened was that the Rabbi Zalman of Lialdi, the author, had taken in numerous chassidim, tens of thousands, over a 20-year period, advised them to deal with their problems and the traumas of our generation. And then eventually he collated it, and it was printed in December 1796, and he distilled the essence of Chassidic teachings, which stem from the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid, his successor, the Maggid of Mezrich, into what we know today as the Tanya, which is called the written Torah, the Bible of Chabad Chassidic philosophy. And if a person is living through a traumatic period, this has incredible answers. I remember years ago when I'm an American, in case you didn't pick up, There was a very prominent rabbi. He wasn't Chabad, he wasn't Lubavitch, a big activist in the Jewish world. He was a scholar. His name was Rabbi Pinchas Teitz. He was the chief rabbi of Elizabeth, New Jersey. And in the 60s and 70s, he was an activist on behalf of the Jews of silence, Jews of Russia, during terrible, difficult times of communist repression. And he would often journey from the United States to the Soviet Union. But because he understood that the Rebbe was the prime mover and shaker behind the scenes on behalf of the Jews of Russia, he would always have an audience with the Rebbe prior to his trip to and get some advice and counsel on what to do, etc. One time the Rebbe gave him 2 Tanyas. He said, you'll know what to do with it. You'll deliver it. Keep it on your person when you're in Russia, which he did. Anyway, one day, it's like a spring day, he's nothing much to do that in the evening, and he's strolling down the streets of Moscow, and suddenly someone grabs him from behind. They gag him. They put a blindfold on his eyes, handcuffs on his hands behind his back, and he's stuffed into a car. And this poor guy didn't know if this is it. So like he's saying his final prayers, saying goodbye to him mentally to his children, his wife. Eventually, the car stops, door opens, and these people lead him into a building. He gets there, they remove the blindfold, the handcuffs, the gag, and he sees a bunch of Chassidic Jews sitting there at a Chassidic Fabrengen. They wanted to get this guy to open up, tell him what's going on in the world, but they were scared in case, God forbid, the KGB comes in and they're in shtuch, they're in problems. They didn't want him to know where this meeting, this group is being held. So they blindfolded him, stuffed him in a car. When he came there, he realized he's amongst friends, and he started Fabring. And then he realized he has 2 little Tanyas, pocket-sized Tanyas, on his person, which the Rebbe had given him. And eventually he tells the Chassidim, and the 2 leading organizers, the activists there, suddenly it dawns upon them, it was probably for these 2 guys. So he picked it out. He gave each one a Tanya. It's a gift from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who told me. And he doesn't know what's it all about. He just thought like some kind of like a present, And he sees they are leafing through the Tanyas, page after page after page. The elder one, he turns to page 100 and Kuf Samach Beis, page 162. And he notices when the Rebbe gave him the Tanya, he dog-eared, he clipped the page on the inside. And the other one, it was page 38 in the Tanya. Check it out yourself, right? And they're both saying, amazing, it's incredible, it's awesome, it's like mind-boggling. And he can't understand what happened here, what's so wow about what happened. And they explained they had both had a predicament. The elder one, the first man, he realized that he's being followed by the KGB, they're on his tail, and things are getting hot here in Moscow. He didn't know maybe he should be forced to flee and go to a place where the climate is a bit more appropriate, where people aren't breathing down his neck, right? He didn't know whether he should stay here in Moscow or leave. The Rebbe sent him this Tanya, and on page 162, it says there, the line begins with the words, things are extremely burning, and you have no time to waste. You have to take action. And he realized the Rebbe was telling him, time to pack out, put on your skates, and get out of Moscow. The second one had the opportunity, potentially, of applying for a visa to emigrate, to leave Russia, to go to Israel. But if you do so and you're unsuccessful, you'll be classified as a refusenik, and you will be thrown out of your job, etc., etc. He didn't know whether to apply or not. And that was the time the first trickle of Russian Jews emigrating to Israel just began. And look it up yourself, on page 38 of the Tanya, it begins with the words, Lo shuv la'eretz Yisrael, to go return to Eretz Yisrael. And both realized that they got their answers based on the Tanyas. And I think there's a metaphor for all of us. We have so many problems in life. We're living in incredibly difficult times. The rabbis tell us that the last moments of the final gullus, of the exile of the Jewish people, called Ikvus de Mashiach, We're both in terms of our physical security, spiritually, it's mamish a difficult period, so much so the greatest of rabbis in the Talmud said, Yesev le'achmeni, let the Messiah come, I don't want to be present in that generation. Because the trials and tribulations are, wow. But the Alter Rebbe put in the Tanya the answers to all the problems we are facing today. I mean, I don't come from a Lubavitch background, I must tell you, right? But when I started learning the Tanya, like a new world, new vistas, new horizon, the world changed for me. And that is how we deal with, Sunday night, in the wee hours of the morning, you may realize, there was an incredible event took place where the Tzahal, the IDF, saved 2 people they were hostages in Gaza, and they were saved. But I want to tell you the background to this. There was these 2 people, Argentinian, they have dual citizenship, Argentinian, Israeli, and their family, the daughter of one of the hostages, Louis Har, the 70-year-old, right? She had a speaking tour around the United States. She happened to have been in a place called Bal Harbor, Florida, next to Miami. And she was speaking broken English, but her husband said ever since October 7th, she can't eat, she can't sleep, she's out of her mind. Her father and her family is taken in captivity. And the people asked, questions and answers after the presentation, what would you like us to do? Do you need funds? You need money? You need gifts? Well, we want you to pray for us. We want you to remember us, to be sensitive to the plight of these hostages. Fine. Then the Rebbitzin of the shul, I know well, she actually was here in Manchester once. She turned to the crowd and says, if you want divine supernatural intervention, you need a miracle, right? You got to break your nature in order that God breaks his nature, that he performs miracles. So if each one takes upon himself a mitzvah, right, which here the 2 is not done, or she has not done, and it's difficult to you, you're a bit out of your comfort zone, and you take it on, that is the key to how to evoke divine mercy. And then she turned to the daughter of the hostage. Have you ever lit Shabbos candles? No, in her entire life, she never ever lit Shabbos candles. Would you accept it from this coming Friday? Without question, yes. She turned to her husband, who was accompanying her. It was a husband and the representative of this organization from Tel Aviv. He was like, would you ever put on tefillin? He's never put on tefillin in his life. Would you agree if my husband provides you with tefillin? Would you agree to put on tefillin every weekday? He said, okay, yeah, he'll do it. Turned to the representative. Would you do it? And he ultimately agreed. So 2 of you come tomorrow morning. The daughter of the hostage says, no, we need not 2 pairs of tefillin, we need 3 pairs of tefillin. Because when my father comes out of captivity, he'll also, I'm sure, want to put on tefillin. And the next morning, the rabbi provided them with 3 pairs of tefillin. And a few days later, Louis and his brother-in-law, were released from captivity in Gaza. Today they're in hospital in Baruch Hashem. Moral of the story is, the word Tanya, name of the book, Taf Nun Yud Aleph, if you scramble the letters, you get the word Eson. Eson refers to the depth, the core, the incorruptible, indestructible neshama, the soul within us. And that is which evokes the power of sacrifice. Actually, there's a story of Tzemach Tzedek, the 3rd Lubavitch Rebbe, the grandson of the author, was once sitting at a Fabringen with Chassidim, and he started laughing. And everyone, why is he laughing? It didn't fit into what's going on. And eventually he told that at that very moment, there was a fellow who was handpicked by the Tsar to be like a general in the army, but because he was Jewish, he was offered the choice to become a general. You'd have to convert, give up your religion. Ultimately, this fellow had an exposure to the Tanya, and the Tanya writes about how it's ingrained within all of us, through our neshama, through the etzin of the neshama, to sacrifice for our faith, for our belief. And the fellow died rather than submitting to the Tsar's proposal. And the Tzemach Tzedek had seen what's going on upstairs in the celestial cosmos, and he saw the fellow is now being escorted into Gan Eden. And they asked the Alter Rebbe, the author, who had evoked this incredible sacrifice and fortitude and strength within him, to dance with the Sefer Tanya in front of this soldier who's now entering Gan Eden accompanied by angels, and the Tzemach Tzedek saw the image of his grandfather dancing with the Tanya, and therefore he was laughing. And that is so relevant. That's why, by the way, the 53 chapters in the first book of the first part of the Tanya, which corresponds to the 53 days in which the author was in jail until he was famously released, Yutis Kislev, Tav Shin, Tav Kuf, Nun, Tes, 1798. Yes? And he was released when he was saying the words, Pada B'Shalom Nafshi. With peace and serenity, I was ultimately redeemed. And a great rabbi pointed out, the words in Hebrew, every letter has a numerical value, gematria. The words Pada B'Shalom Nafshi has the same numerical value as the words Likutei Amor and Tanya. The Tanya is the vehicle through which we effect our redemption, as the Baal Shem Tov was promised, through events like Rabbi Simon has organized, by spreading the words of Torah, of Chassidus, of the Alter Rebbe, where we're sure that God will redeem us from all this misery the world is going through now, and will ultimately be dancing with the Tanya and Sefer Torah in the third Beis HaMikdash with Melech HaMashiach. Amen. Thank you for listening.